For centuries, the story of Damascus steel was the stuff of legend, whispered by crusaders and kings. They spoke of blades that could cut a silk scarf floating on air, yet shatter lesser weapons.
The exact method for making that ancient steel was lost to time, but today, we revive it.
In this forge, from these raw bars of steel, we will create this, a blade of legend.
The age of secrets is over, so join us as we resurrect this ancient, deadly art form.
You will witness every hammer blow, every shower of sparks, and every heart-stopping moment of this process.
We transform this inert metal into a weapon of unparalleled beauty and deadly function right before you.
This is not just a process. It is the resurrection of an art form lost to time.
This is how a Damascus steel sword is truly born, starting right now in this very shop. The journey does not start with fire, but with a choice that defines the soul of the blade. The very soul of a Damascus blade comes from fusing different steels together, each with unique character.
If you get this part wrong, the whole project is doomed before the first spark even flies.
The pattern will look muddy, the edge won't stay sharp, and the blade could literally tear apart.
Everything that comes next, the sweat, the fire, the long hours of hammering, depends on this decision.
It all depends on the decisions we make right here with these cold, quiet bars of metal.
This is the foundation where a masterpiece is built or where a total disaster is unfortunately made.
This is where the magic starts, with carefully choosing our ingredients, specifically 1084 high carbon steel and 15N20.
Think of them as light and shadow, two opposing forces that will combine to create something new. The 1084 is rich in carbon, and it is what will create deep, dark layers in patterns. It is the workhorse steel that will form our cutting edge, providing the hardness we desperately need. The 15N20, on the other hand, is our light, containing nickel that stubbornly resists the acid later.
So when the 1084 etches to a stormy gray, the 15N20 will stay a brilliant, shining silver.
This gives us that breathtaking contrast that defines Damascus steel and makes it so visually stunning to see.
We start by cutting the bars into uniform pieces, making them all about 8 inches long today.
You have to be precise here, since any big difference in size will cause problems down the line.
For this blade, we are starting with a stack of 7 layers arranged in a specific pattern. I arranged 2 bars of dark 1084, 1 bar of bright 15N20, and continue that specific sequence.
This initial stack is called a billet, and it is the seed from which the sword grows.
Now, before these layers can become one, they have to be perfectly clean and free of dirt.
The enemy of a good forge weld is any kind of contamination, like scale, oil, or rust.
Anything that can create a tiny gap is a weak spot that can cause the blade to delaminate.
We grind the surface of each bar until it shines a raw, clean silver, ready for welding.
Then, the stack gets clamped tightly in a vise, ensuring there is no movement between the layers.
I run a quick weld along the edges to hold the billet together for its first trip.
This isn't the real forge weld, it just holds the billet together as it enters the fire.
The forge roars to life, a dragon's breath heating the chamber to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
We put the billet inside and just watch, waiting for the steel to tell us it is ready.
It starts to glow dull red, then cherry, and finally a brilliant, almost wet-looking orange-yellow color.
That's...
I use long tongs to pull the glowing billet from the forge, feeling the heat on my face.
Move it to the anvil and sprinkle it with anhydrous borax, which acts as our flux.
It melts into a liquid glass, shielding the steel from oxygen and dissolving any impurities for us.
Then comes the hammer, a mechanical titan that hits with a force I could never match by hand. Each blow sends a shockwave through the metal, a rhythm that defines a smith's life in the shop. The billet compresses, spitting out molten flux in a shower of sparks as the layers fuse together.
I am forcing those 7 layers to fuse into a single, solid block of steel right now.
The goal is to squash it down to half its original thickness, locking the layers together forever.
Once that first weld is set, the real artistry begins. But 7 layers is not nearly enough.
A legendary sword needs hundreds, even thousands of layers, so we must multiply what we have started.
I pull it out, score a line down its center, and prepare to fold the billet in half.
With a few hammer blows, I fold the billet, and just like that, 7 layers become 14.
But it is not that simple, because the new surfaces touching in the middle must be welded.
We repeat the process, going back into the fire with more flux to set the new weld.
Back to the power hammer for more thunderous blows to ensure the new weld is solid.
Now it is a solid billet with 14 layers, so we draw it out, making it longer.
28 becomes 56, and with each fold, the layers compress and multiply exponentially inside the steel. We continue this grueling cycle, heating, folding, fluxing, and welding, over and over again for hours.
It is physically demanding work, but necessary to build the layer count required for a complex pattern.
The numbers climb rapidly, from 56 to 112, then over 200 layers.
After 8 folds, our little 7-layer stack has turned into a billet with 1,792 layers.
This dense, layered block is the canvas for our pattern, holding nearly 2,000 layers of history.
With the multi-layered billet forged, the brute force work gives way to something more like sculpture.
This block of steel now holds all the potential, all the swirling lines of the final blade.
My job is to coax that beauty out, to shape this rectangle into the form of a sword.
For this blade, I am aiming for a dramatic, twisted pattern down the middle, framed by ladders. It starts by drawing out the billet, heating it to orange, and lengthening the bar slowly.
It is a slow, methodical process of working it from all sides to keep it perfectly square.
You cannot rush steel. You have to work with it, feeling how it moves under the die.
Forging a sword this size means moving a lot of material, transforming a block into a bar.
The finished sword will be over 3 feet long and maybe a 1/4 inch thick at its spine.
I start to forge its basic anatomy, isolating material for the tang that goes inside the handle.
Then I will start to forge the tip, carefully hammering the other end into a sharp point.
With the rough shape established, it is time to create the pattern, starting with the twist.
Focus on the middle third, heating it to a perfectly uniform orange color for the twist.
If one part is hotter than another, it will twist unevenly and ruin the symmetry of the pattern.
Once the heat is right, I lock the tip of the blank into a heavy vise quickly. I clamp a big wrench onto the tang, and with slow, controlled force, I twist the bar. The steel groans as those 1,000 straight layers are forced into a tight, helical spiral structure.
It looks like stripes on a candy cane, and one full revolution is all it needs today.
Too much twist and the pattern gets muddy, too little and it is not dramatic enough.
That single, forceful twist has just transformed the core of the blade into a vortex of steel.
But we are not done, because next up is the ladder pattern to frame the twist.
Using a thin cutting wheel, I grind shallow grooves across the width of the blade on both sides.
These cuts go down through the top layers of steel, flanking that central twist we just made. Seems crazy to scar a perfectly good billet, but this is controlled destruction for the sake of creation.
With the grooves cut, the billet goes back into the forge one last time for final shaping.
I heat it up, bring it to the anvil, and now I hammer the blade flat again.
As the hammer falls, the metal on the sides of the grooves gets pushed down and inward. As it does that, the layers underneath are forced to bulge upwards, disrupting the straight lines. When I grind the blade, I will cut across these waves, revealing a pattern like ladder rungs.
Now for the final forging, where I work the whole length of the blade to refine it.
I flatten the twisted section and refine the laddered parts to ensure the thickness is consistent throughout. I forge in the distal taper, the gradual thinning from hilt to tip that gives balance.
I establish the primary bevels, the wide, flat planes that will eventually become the sharp cutting edge.
This is all done by eye and feel, 1,000 small hammer blows making 1,000 adjustments.
It is no longer a block. It is starting to look like a sword, with secrets inside.
Locked inside is a secret map of twists and ladders, just waiting to be revealed to us.
The heavy, brutal work is done, but now we enter the most dangerous stage of all: heat treatment.
All that work, the steel selection, the folds, the careful forging, can be destroyed in mere minutes.
This is the moment of truth, and there are no do-overs if we get this part wrong. A single mistake or hidden flaw, and the blade will warp horribly or crack with a ping. First, we have to normalize the steel, because the intense heat of forging creates stress in the blade. If we tried to harden it now, those stresses would tear it apart, so we must relax it. I place the blade back in the forge and heat it evenly to around 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit.
A simple magnet tells me when I am at critical temperature, as steel loses magnetism right there.
Once it hits that temperature, I pull it out and just let it cool in still air.
This lets the steel's grain structure relax and refine, preparing it for the shock that is coming.
After normalization, it is time for the quench, so I check my vertical tank of oil.
The oil is preheated to about 120 degrees to lessen the violent shock to the steel.
The forge goes to full blast and the blade goes in for the most critical heating event.
I watch the color, moving the blade back and forth to ensure every inch is perfectly uniform.
It has to be an even, glowing orange with absolutely no dark spots or bright spots anywhere.
The sword's fate hangs on this moment, and when the color is perfect, you cannot hesitate.
In one smooth, vertical motion, I plunge it point first into the oil, and the world erupts.
The oil explodes into a violent boil, flashing into a ball of fire that engulfs my hand. Thick, acrid smoke billows to the ceiling as the steel cools from 1500 degrees instantly.
The sound is a furious hiss as the temperature drops to just a few hundred degrees.
In that instant, its internal structure is frozen into a new, incredibly hard state called martensite. I hold it steady until the hissing subsides, ensuring the blade does not warp while cooling down. I slowly pull it out. It is coated in a black crust of burnt oil and carbon. Right now, it is as brittle as glass. A sharp tap could shatter it into pieces.
To test it, I run a file along the edge. Instead of biting, the file just skates.
It leaves no mark, which means the quench worked and the blade is undeniably hard. The moment of danger is over, but to give it resilience, it needs to be tempered immediately.
Tempering softens the steel just enough to make it tough, so it flexes instead of breaking.
The sword survived the fire and oil, and now it is not just hard, but also tough. Yet, its greatest secret is still hidden. To the naked eye, the blade is just uniform gray.
It is smooth to the touch and gives no clue about the complex world of layers beneath.
Twist the ladders, they are all invisible, but that is about to change with the acid etch.
This is the part that finally unveils the soul of the Damascus using a solution of ferric chloride.
The secret is that this acid attacks different steels at different rates, eating the high carbon aggressively. The nickel-rich 15N20 resists the acid, staying bright while the 1084 darkens, creating our contrast.
First, the blade has to be perfectly clean. Any trace of oil will leave a permanent smudge. I suspend the sword from its tang and get ready. This is always a quiet, intense moment. With a steady hand, I lower the entire blade into the acid, watching it disappear into darkness.
For a few seconds, nothing happens. Then slowly, the surface bubbles as the acid goes to work.
The liquid around the blade begins to darken as it dissolves microscopic bits of the carbon steel.
I let it sit for several minutes, and the anticipation is intense as I wait for the reveal.
You have an idea of what the pattern should look like, but you never really know for sure. After what feels like forever, I lift the blade. It comes out dripping with a black sludge.
It looks like a ruined, featureless spike of metal, but that black sludge is just a mask.
Then, under running water, I gently wipe away the black oxides with a soft cloth to reveal it. And then it appears, like a photograph developing in a dark room. The pattern suddenly emerges from the gray. First, the bright silver lines catch the light. Then the dark, velvety gray provides the stunning contrast. The
The central twist is now a stunning vortex of spiraling lines flowing down the blade's center line.
Flanking it, the ladder pattern appears, its rungs marching in precise, shimmering steps along the blade edge. It is breathtaking. As light plays across the surface, the pattern seems to shift and move like water.
This phenomenon is what the ancients called the water in the steel, and now we have it.
This is the moment all the fire, sweat, and risk was for. The secret is finally out.
The soul of the sword is finally visible, a stunning tapestry of light and shadow revealed to us.
The blade is revealed, but it is not a sword yet. A sword is more than steel.
It is an extension of your hand, so the final stage is to craft the guard and handle. Here, the work moves from the brutal heat of the forge to the fine detail of the bench.
The guard protects the hand, and I forge it to match my initial drawing of a crossguard. I shape it with hammers and files, ensuring it fits perfectly flush against the blade's shoulders. Then I hand sand it to a satin finish that complements the blade without outshining the Damascus pattern.
The pommel acts as a counterbalance, making the heavy sword feel lively and responsive in the hand.
The handle, or grip, is the connection between wielder and weapon, so I chose a core of hardwood.
I carve the wood to fit the tang perfectly, then wrap it tightly with leather cord for grip.
As a final touch, I add a small decorative ridge in the center, called a riser.
This riser helps with hand placement, allowing you to know where the edge is without looking down. Assembly is a slow process of fitting everything together, sliding the guard onto the tang first.
The handle slides on next, fitting snugly, followed finally by the heavy pommel at the very end.
To lock it all together, I use a historical method called peening, which requires no glue or screws. The end of the tang, sticking out from the pommel, is heated with a torch until glowing.
Then I hammer it down, riveting it over the pommel, locking the entire assembly into one unit. It is one incredibly solid unit now, just the ancient, unbreakable bond of forged steel holding it. The very last step is to put that final, wicked edge on the blade using water stones.
Using a series of stones with finer and finer grits, I carefully hone the bevels to perfection.
It is a slow, meditative process that creates an edge sharp enough to slice paper with a whisper.
And now, after weeks of labor, it is finished, and I hold the completed sword in my hands.
It feels alive, the balance is perfect, and it moves as an extension of my own body. The light glints off the hypnotic patterns of the steel, a testament to the fire and force. To think this began as a pile of raw steel bars is almost hard to believe now. The journey was full of challenges, the risk of a bad weld, the constant danger of cracks.
But to stand here now, holding the finished piece, is a feeling of immense satisfaction and pride.
It connects me.
This sword is more than just a weapon. It is a story written in fire and steel. It is a story of raw potential being shaped by skill, intention, and hours of hard labor.
And it is a story that will now live on, long after the forge has gone cold.
This craft is a lifelong journey,
And there are always more secrets to unlock from the fire.
If you were captivated by this transformation, consider subscribing to the channel to see what we build next. Every project is a new story waiting to be told, and we want you along for the ride.
Thank you for joining me in the forge today and for witnessing the birth of this blade.
We took the legendary principles of the past and brought them to life with modern techniques today.
We turned humble, ugly materials into an object of beauty and purpose through patience and intense heat.
This is the heart of craftsmanship, and it has been a privilege to share it with you.
As the forge cools down, we remember that steel is eternal, but the smith is merely temporary. Remember that patience, fire, and steel are the only ingredients you need to make history come alive.
This sword is now complete, a testament to the art of Damascus steel that will never die.
Until next time, keep your hammer heavy, your fire hot, and your edges sharp in the shop.
Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video for another incredible build.
This has been a masterclass in Damascus steel, and now go out and make something amazing yourself today.